right, it's win or lose. Game 6 for the Bulls. 10 seconds. Jordan, 20-footer, head of the key. Good! Chicago by 1.
Sauerbruch, 20, 10, 5, touchdown! 75-yard punt return. Devin Hester, you are ridiculous.
10 seconds. You've got 10 seconds. The countdown going on right now. Morrow up to Schultz. 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes!
Sachs waiting on deck, but the game right now is at the plate. High fly ball into right field. She is gone!
Super Bowl 50.
Gets the blood pumping.
Got to be kidding me, Jerry!
There's it to Jenkins for the championship.
The Eagles win it.
Unbelievable!
I don't believe it.
Davis! Oh my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
Not only are they the narrators, and not only are they the storytellers, they are the eyes and ears of sports.
I'm Joe Brand, and I'm the voice of the Kane County Cougars. Line shot left side of the infield, backhanded by Jefferson, long peg to first, in and out of the glove of Karabiotis. For a base runner in Vince Jackson, that's going to be a base hit. Really just kind of grew up watching Cubs and White Sox broadcasts and just really observing what Chip Caray and Hawk Harrelson did, loving the way Pat Hughes could describe the action and the way John Rooney painted the picture. It started off as just fandom of the game, and then as my career kind of progressed, it was more of, how do I get better at this? How do I improve myself at this? And how do I enjoy myself in this spot a little bit more? And it's only gotten better as it's gone along.
I'm Brian Anderson, and I'm the voice of the Milwaukee Brewers.
Shaw coming in, Lester not bunting, back up the middle. Perez misplays it, and everybody will be safe. Baez turns and runs to third. Now he's coming home. Throw to the plate and safe.
My phrase at the time was, I have to go to my plan B, and my plan B was broadcasting. Because my plan A was always to be a player. I wanted to be a player. My brother at the time was a professional player. So I was going through college thinking that, man, I have a chance to maybe play just like he did. And then I realized probably 2 years too late that I wasn't going to be good enough to play. I remember a story. This scout came up to me and I was just about to go catch a game. I just warmed up the pitcher. We were about to play a game. It was versus Rice. And we were in Houston playing this game, and I saw this scout walking right at me. I said, oh, this is great, man. He's going to probably want to sign me, and I'm going to go be a professional baseball player too. And he came walking right up to me. His name was Julian Mock. And he flagged me over, and I walked over, and I go, how you doing, Mr. Mock? He goes, you know what? We've been thinking about you. We think you might have a bright future. And in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, this is it. Okay, I'm going to be a pro. And he goes, yeah, we think you'd make a great scout. And it was like such a buzzkill right there. I'm just about to go play this game, and he's telling me, we don't think you're good enough to be a player, but we think you'd be a great scout. So I had to rally up my confidence and play in the game. But that was kind of basically the point when I said, you know what, these guys don't really think I'm good enough. I better start looking at other means. Baseball scout was one opportunity. Broadcasting was another opportunity, and I chose the broadcasting world.
I'm Julio Rauseo, and I'm the voice of the Windy City Bulls. McKinney driving and throw it down. They always wanted to be a sports play-by-play announcer, specifically ever since I was a little kid. I'm still trying to figure out why I wanted to be a play-by-play announcer, but I for some strange reason, I always loved listening to games, radio, television, and mimicking what I was listening to. And obviously, as a kid growing up with the Jordan Bulls and the White Sox mini run of the 90s, and growing up watching Frank Thomas and those players, and watching the Bears and even the Packers and that success in the 96 Super Bowl, I enjoyed not only just watching the games, but listening to the announcers. So again, as a kid, I would mimic those guys.
I'm Len Casper, and I'm the voice of the Chicago Cubs.
Off the pitcher and through into center.
Perez whipped on it. Now Baez trying to score, and he will score! You know, I didn't know if I'd be any good at it, but when I was about 12 or 13, I wanted to be the next Ernie Harwell. Ernie was the longtime Tiger radio broadcaster, and I thought this would be a really cool job to get paid to talk about baseball. So I was lucky in that I knew at a very young age that I wanted to be in sports broadcasting.
Hi, I'm John Weideman. I'm the radio play-by-play voice of the Chicago Blackhawks.
Kay swings it around. Oh, and all the way down the ice it goes. For the third time in 6 seasons, it's one goal achieved. The Chicago Blackhawks win the Stanley Cup.
I think the moment that it dawned on me, really truly dawned on me, was when I went away to play college hockey in upstate New York, in Brockport, New York, which is a town about 15 miles to the west of Rochester. It was a SUNY school, State University of New York school, and I was the 26th man on a 25-man roster. I found out right then and there I wasn't going to be able to play regularly. But when I really knew that I wasn't going to play in the National Hockey League was the day that I walked into an arena in Niagara Falls, Ontario, Niagara Memorial Arena. And I saw these guys playing in what was then known as the OHA, the Ontario Hockey Association. It's now known as the OHL, the Ontario Hockey League. But when I saw how fast and how skilled these guys were, I said to myself, there is no way that I can play that well. There's no way. So now I have to shift my focus. And pretty much from that moment I did. And the path was a long one, and sometimes took me to destinations that I really wasn't sure about. But at the same time, it helped to give me clarity on what I needed to do, which was, continue to play hockey for fun. I still play. I played last night. I'm 60 years old. I still play. I love to play. But I know I'm never going to be good. I don't have the God-given athletic ability to make it to the National Hockey League. So I play for fun, but I talk about the game for a job.
And then I got into student radio at Marquette, doing the Marquette basketball games. While I didn't major in broadcasting, I got a lot of experience outside the classroom doing it. Made a lot of mistakes, but as you move along in your career, you just need to kind of chip away at that a little bit and get a little better every broadcast. And fortunately, I had some really good friends who were a little older than I was at Marquette at the time, who gave me an opportunity to do some play-by-play, and it really did me wonders down the road.
It was interesting because I got to start right away as a freshman in sports broadcasting. So from late August till I graduated in May, I was doing high school football, play-by-play announcing, all the way to college football, softball announcing. So for my 4 years, I truly had a hands-on experience from the technical side to full-on announcing and traveling with the team. So it was an intense 4 years, to say the least.
First of all, I placed great value on it because it helped me to grow as a person from the time I entered college, which was back in 1975, right out of high school. I think that the experience at the University of Kansas was a very positive one, and that a lot of people there that had influence on what I did, and they kind of guided me in the right direction, which I think is enormous for a young, impressionable person that really is not sure what they want to do with their life. So that experience, I think, was very positive. I mentioned Brockport, the school in upstate New York. I went there for 1 year because I wanted to see if I could play college hockey. And obviously, the year went by and I didn't play very much, and that's how that went. But I did go back to the University of Kansas to finish, and I'll be a Jayhawk the rest of my life. I'm very proud to say that.
One thing about sports broadcasting, maybe more than any other job, is that experience is paramount. A lot of people watch, listen to games, and they say, like I did when I was a teenager, that sounds really fun and it sounds really easy, and the people who are really good at it kind of make it sound easy, and then you stick a microphone in somebody's face and you say, okay, you've got the next 3 hours, go ahead and talk, and they tend to clam up.
I had 2 internships in college, both at some of the top stations in their respective mediums. Television and radio was tremendous, and getting to see how dinner is made, so to speak, at those particular stations, what the work ethic is like was like a sponge, just absorbing all of that, the fly on the wall, just trying to be at the station any time I could be, with, you know, extending my time, trying to put in as much hours as possible. It was a huge goal, and even if you grew up in a smaller market and got an internship in a small market, that experience is still invaluable.
My first internship was in the summer of 2011. I was going to Illinois State University, and there was the normal Corn Belters in town, independent league baseball team, looking for a broadcast intern. I didn't even get on the air until the All-Star break, and even by then, me and the other intern each got 1 inning alternating games. But I'm glad I did the internship, because 2 years later, I got an internship with the Windy City Thunderbolts, same league, independent baseball, but it's 5 minutes away from my parents' house where I just graduated college. So I went there. From there, midway through the season, there was another team in the league up in Traverse City. Their broadcaster was leaving. They asked if I could finish out the rest of the year, so I went and did that. And I basically was able to get this job because I had the Traverse City job. So each job led to the next one. I mean, they were all interns. They were all internships except for Traverse City. I even started here as an intern. But each opportunity led to the next one.
Well, my first internship actually took place before I really got into the broadcasting world. It was kind of a work in progress thing. We had a hockey team in Kansas City. It was a semi-professional hockey team, and it's called the Kansas City Knights. And they needed somebody to handle the broadcasting. I volunteered on Jackson County Cablevision out of Kansas City to handle the broadcast for their home games. And so that was kind of an internship in a way. I didn't get paid any money for it, but it was tremendous experience.
Well, I was really lucky. So my internship was with the San Antonio Spurs. I got lucky because they trained at my college. Their training camp was at St. Mary's University, so I was able to connect to a lot of those players. And then also at St. Mary's in Texas, where I went to school, we shared the minor league field with the AA baseball team. So I was doubly lucky getting to know both of those entities, minor league baseball team, NBA basketball team. And it's really important, you know, I did a lot of work for free. I was very proactive, but I did a lot for free, and I found out and learned as best I could what the needs were. Where does this particular guy have a need? Does he need a logger? Does he need somebody to run tapes? Does he need somebody to coil cables? So I was able to figure out, okay, he has a need here, he has a need there, and I filled that need, and that allowed me to stay around. And then all the while knowing that I had a goal in mind, that I wanted to be a broadcaster.
I got an internship with the Milwaukee Bucks PR department. It happened to be the second season of the Bradley Center, and it was during the golden age of the NBA, really, with Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan and Sidney Moncrief and the Pistons teams, and it was just an amazing time. And I'll never forget the first guy I see. I'm an 18-year-old freshman, and we've got an exhibition game in Green Bay, and Jack Sikma walks into the room. He's 7 feet tall, and I thought, this feels like a big deal. So that was really kind of inspirational for me, and I thought I really like being around this.
From there, the move to Chicago, the Chicagoland area in 1989. I had to have a separate job so that I could pay my bills and be able to have the opportunity to maybe find an internship. Okay, somebody's got to pay those bills. So I had to have another job, which I did. And I was fortunate enough to land an internship at WLUP Radio in downtown Chicago. It was in the Hancock Building, AM 1000. And the show at that time was Kopic on Sports. And my boss was a guy named Dan McNeil. They called him Dangerous Dan McNeil. He was a great guy, Danny. Still works here in the area. And he is a big hockey fan. And he found out that I was an enormous Blackhawks fan. And so we hit it off. And he said, I want to hire you to be an intern here for Kopic on Sports. I said, great. I'll take any experience I can get, especially big-time radio experience. So I did that for 6 months and met a lot of great people in the radio business. It had a profound influence on me, I think, because it kind of filled in the missing picture about what happens in big-time radio. If you've never been in it, you just don't know. You have visions, you have these perceptions of what it might be, but until you actually get there and do the work and invest the time, and you take some shots too, it's part of it, but it's all part of the growth. And from that, I began to send resumes out with my own demo, and little by little I landed work, and eventually I landed my first hockey play-by-play job over in Muskegon, Michigan.
I also had an internship, a paid internship with Monday Night Football, which was a major break in the Frank, Al, and Dan days, the Frank Gifford, Al Michaels, Dan Deerdorf days. And so I got to see the best level of broadcasting at 19, 20 years old. That kind of set the standard of, okay, this is where I want to make it. Now I've got to go all the way back down to the bottom and fight my way up, knowing that I've seen the best broadcasting in sports. Monday Night Football at the time, it was on ABC. And then I had to check a lot of that, what I saw, and say, okay, this is what I have available to me, the tools that are available to me, and then start to pursue that. And a lot of that was based on the internships and the free work that I did to try to just get a foot in the door.
But internships, the value to me, there's no price you can put on that, because internships help you to understand the business you're working in, to know some of the people, and to kind of get a foothold as far as your level of confidence is concerned, professionally. And I think that's very important as you try and pursue better work.
My goal was to do baseball. It took me a little longer to maybe get to baseball than I originally had thought. But now that I look back early in my career, a lot of the other things I did, not only the basketball play-by-play at Marquette, but I did some DJing at WMUR. I did sports talk shows at WTMJ. I did some morning anchoring and afternoon anchoring. I did pre and post game for the Green Bay Packers. All of that stuff helped later on when I started to get into the baseball side of things. All of those things I did helped me become a much better broadcaster doing baseball.
Landed a job, as I said, in Muskegon, Michigan, a team with an expansion team in the Colonial Hockey League called the Muskegon Fury. The pay was really immaterial to me. What was of greatest value in that situation was the fact that I had the opportunity to step into the professional hockey world. These guys were pros. They were paid. They were brought in from different areas of North America, even in Europe, and they were paid a salary to play professional hockey. So knowing that this was a professional situation, I thought this is exactly where I need to go to start my own growth as far as my broadcasting career, play-by-play career is concerned.
I had never done live golf, but I was really connected to the sport. I worked at a golf course all those years I was in the minor leagues, one of my multiple jobs that I had. My family all played golf. I had an aunt that played on the LPGA, had an uncle who played on the PGA Tour. So I was connected to golf in that way, but that job was really an opportunity for me to go make a living. You know, it was the first time I'd ever made a good living, a six-figure contract. You know, I thought I'd hit the lottery. After working in minor league baseball for $25 a game, it was a huge opportunity, and it was scary. Coming from the NBA, or the fast-paced life of the NBA, going into the golf world. But again, it was a survive and advance kind of mentality. You know, I know the sport. I haven't done it mechanically. Let's learn the mechanics and let's do it.
That year was a huge growth year for me. From that year, I gained a lot of confidence, and I felt in the second year that I was there that I was ready to take the next step, which was to get to either, at the time, the American Hockey League or the International Hockey League, because they were kind of on the same level. And I thought, I can make that step. I felt that confident by the end of my second year, and I sent out demo tapes and resumes. We had it on tape back then, and resumes to 13 different places. And one by one, they all said, thank you for your information. We've decided to go in another direction, except for one place, and that was in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is an AHL expansion team called the Worcester Ice Cats. And I was on the Mass Pike heading toward Boston, and the next big town was Worcester, Massachusetts. And I thought, I've got nothing to lose, I've got everything to gain. They had all my information with me, tapes, resumes, everything. Went into the office, asked for an appointment to see the general manager. He was kind enough to talk with me for half an hour. I left my information with him. That was June. And the month of July went by, and all those rejection letters came and all of that. on my birthday, August the 16th. I was in Muskegon, Michigan. I was pushing myself away from the desk to go get lunch. And the guy I spoke with in Worcester, Jimmy Roberts, called and said, "We want you to be our radio guy." And that was my step up from the Colonial League to the American Hockey League. And to get to the NHL was another step.
And then we had the benefit of starting this brand new tour there, the Nationwide Tour. It had existed in a different form, but Nationwide was a new sponsor, and we got to do kind of whatever we wanted. So we had the empty canvas, and we got to build golf and make something cool out of it, and that was a really great experience. And then the golf led to other things at that point, you know, working basketball games and NBA games, college games, and ultimately the Brewers.
I moved to Wyoming. I was looking for jobs all across the Midwest, moved out there, and really took a chance on the general manager, believed in him. I only had a phone interview with this guy. I didn't fly out there and tour the city and say, yeah, maybe I'll take a job here. No, I had a phone interview, listened to the guy, listened to his pitch, and thought, hey, this could be a good opportunity. And then from there, within 3 weeks, the sports director left. I applied for that position to go from part-time to full-time, got that position. So that, I guess that was my big break, because I went from part-time on air to more of a managerial role within 3 weeks. And that was really my first big job out of school.
Hour number 10 for Bob and Brian Radiothon for the MAC Fund. You know, things are going to get exciting now. Welcome to the program. From Fox Sports, I guess. I'm not among others. Okay, yeah, because you're all over the place. Let's face it. Brian Anderson. Good afternoon, Brian. How are you?
Great to see you guys. You look great for being in here for 10 hours.
Today was an interesting day, a little bit out of the norm, because today we were supporting this great foundation called the MAC Fund. It's Midwest Athletes for Childhood Cancer. And every year they do this long marathon on the radio, and I was one of many guests today, so I always enjoy being a part of that. It's a great foundation that supports research for childhood cancer, and they really do probably the best job in our area here in the Midwest, so I'm always willing to support them. So I got to go be on the radio today with Bob and Brian, who are pretty legendary morning DJs here in the Milwaukee area. And they're working all day long, so I got their grumpy side, I think, today.
Game day, I start with family duties. My wife and I talk for a little while, have coffee together, and talk about the day. And then I go up and I get cleaned up, get into a suit, and get into my car, go down to the United Center. At the morning skate, that's a hunter-gatherer kind of a mode as far as broadcasters are concerned, because you have to build your broadcast for that night. So they provide you with information called game notes and stats, but during that time you have access to the players too. So you can go into the dressing room and you can talk to certain players. Not for very long, the window's only about 20-30 minutes maybe. And you go in and you ask questions that are relevant to the game that night, or maybe some personal anecdote. Then in the afternoon, I will go home and I'll pull the game notes out and I'll really go through them, front to back, back to front, and make sure that there's not something in there that I missed in the morning. Because sometimes you get busy and people, while you're working, people will come over to you and say, hey, did you see this or did you see that? And it takes your attention away from what should be your study time. And sometimes you miss things. So I take that hour in the afternoon, like a leisurely hour when I'm sitting with my dog or whatever, and I will read through the game notes back and forth and make sure, maybe even the stats, look for things that are critical, that might be relevant for the broadcast.
You've got to embrace the season. So I was doing college basketball announcing this year. I tried to not only keep up on my particular team and that particular conference, but college basketball as a whole. So I would be watching West Coast games from the Mountain West Conference, the Pac-12, et cetera, to East Coast conferences, mid-majors, big schools, to listen to different broadcasters and get a feel, get more of a terminology base down, to just getting more of a general feel of the college basketball game. And then from there, I would try to scout as many teams as possible in my particular schedule, see their tendencies, see how they would see player trends, play-by-play, statistical breakdown. And then the day of the game, depending on if I'm traveling with the team, I'll get there a couple hours to the arena, a couple hours before the game, go over my notes once again, look at sort of the players who might be playing tonight, make sure I have their last names down. That's the most important. Talk to sports and information directors, team PR staff, whatever it may be. And so by the time, an hour before tip-off, you're comfortable and you're ready to go.
If I have the time before we go on the air, I will seek out the broadcaster from the other team and ask him, what's going on with your team lately? Is there something I should be looking for? The goaltender that's starting tonight, how has he been here in the last 5 games? What's going on with your team? You may not get anything, but you might come across some real important information. And that gives you another nugget to talk about when you go on the air, because you have to remember, the airtime that you have, it is finite, but it can seem like it's infinite if you're in that moment and you have nothing to talk about. So what you do is you do your homework ahead of the broadcast and you prepare.
To get game notes, stat packs, roster inserts. There's a lot of tedious daily routines that you have to go through when we're at home. Make sure everything's set for our clubhouse, our coaches, our managers. Same thing with the visiting side. And again, being at the ballpark every day, you get to take in a lot from the players. You get to learn a lot, and that's what I try to portray on my broadcast too, is just easily, slowly feeding out information without forcing it, without reading off a piece of paper everything that the guy has done in his career, and just basically letting the game breathe and letting the broadcast tell itself. You have to say what's going on in the game first, because that's why people are listening. Everything else is just gravy to the meat and potatoes of the actual broadcast.
My daily routine would, for a regular season baseball game, would start about 1 o'clock, and I would get into maybe the opponent's starting pitcher, some of the news of the day, some of the things that I would be focused on for our broadcast, whether we do in our broadcast open.
A couple of lefties on the mound here tonight. Jon Lester for Chicago, Brent Suter for the Brewers. And we'll talk a little bit of pitching when we continue.
So that's when my day starts, and then you do a little bit of prep for maybe 2 or 3 hours. Then you get yourself ready, get yourself presentable, get in the car, come down to Miller Park, try to be at the ballpark about 3 hours before first pitch. Now basketball is a little bit different. You usually show up at a basketball arena for a basketball game about 90 minutes or maybe 2 hours before. So baseball, there's batting practice, there's opportunities to talk to coaches and players and anything, the news of the day that can help you in the broadcast. So the baseball day is a little longer, but it's a little more laid back pace as well, which is what I like and kind of what I prefer.
There's a thought among some people that you have to prepare differently when your team is not very good versus when your team is very good. And I kind of believe that I prepare the same way no matter what. That my job is to call the game accurately and make sure that we're not missing anything, and to try to convey the excitement of that 3-hour window, whether it leads to a championship or to a 4th place finish. When people tune in to Cubs baseball, they want to hear the best broadcast every day. So I wouldn't say that I necessarily prepare differently depending on the season, but I would say when the team is really good, you probably hold back a little bit on some of the material you would normally use. When the Cubs were not winning, we did a lot of minor league news and information to talk about the kids who were coming to the big leagues. Here's what Kyle Schwarber did at AA. Here's what Chris Bryant did at AAA. But once those guys got to the big leagues and the team was winning, the focus became on what's happening in this game at that moment.
It goes without saying how lucky I am to be in Chicago and do this. But this is a great organization. It's a great ballpark. For the majority of it, we've been with the Arizona Diamondbacks, who've been a great affiliation. But it's a great front office. Nobody really steps on anyone's toes. It's a family-friendly, feel-good place. The opportunities I've gotten here have been phenomenal, and it's baseball. I mean, so it's just all packaged, wrapped up in one. I'm very lucky to be here. There's been 3 broadcasters from here that are now in the major leagues, but it's a well-known minor league establishment. This place gets filled up on Saturday nights in the summer. I remember my first year here thinking, where the heck are these people coming from? It's just cool to be a part of that atmosphere. And it's great to have the luxury of broadcasting in something like that, because we have a 3rd of July game when this place is filled up. I love just sliding the crowd mic just a little bit up higher, just to hear just the common buzz and along with the crack of the bat, you hear bits of conversations and kids laughing and just everything to make you actually feel like you're at the ballpark.
The Brewers were my first major league broadcasting job, and it's the only one I've ever had with a team in baseball. And so I had not done a whole lot of television baseball. I've done a lot of television, NBA, sideline, golf, but I hadn't done, believe it or not, a whole lot of television Major League Baseball coverage. From day one, it took me probably a month to feel like, okay, I got this now, I get. And when I realized it's very similar to the minor league game, the pace of it, everything that I had learned in the minor leagues. And so once I kind of got that going and the plays happened, I said, okay, now I can relax. And I still get nervous. I still get anxious before every telecast and still get a little buzz, which is a good thing. That heightens your awareness and your focus. But those first few years, it was a challenge. Thank goodness we were very good the first year.
I certainly feel fortunate and lucky at this point to be doing play-by-play announcing for a team that has such a footing in basketball, not only in the States but worldwide, with the Chicago Bulls brand, and obviously that's translated with the Windy City Bulls and how people have viewed them online this year. So I feel lucky to be in that position. And then with Chicago State, it's a Division I basketball, and everyone's chomping at the bit to do D1 basketball. So again, I feel lucky if it's a small mid-major or one of the blue chip programs. It's still D1 school. So it's pinching myself and counting my stars, really.
I love the job that I do. I love the Blackhawks, number one. I'm a fan of the team. And number two, I love talking about them. And number three, I think this might even be ahead of everything, is I love serving the game of hockey and getting it out there in front of all the other sports. You can't sell me that basketball is the best sport ever. It's not, in my opinion. It's down at number 5. Football, great sport, it's not number 1 on me. Baseball, great sport, not number 1, sorry, with me. Number 1 is hockey, and I'll always say that.
The amount of work and struggle that goes into such a fun career goes mostly overlooked by the average audience, yet they do not feel like it is a job because they love what they do.
You let the game dictate where the broadcast goes, and I equate it to an open book test at school. If you study and you prepare and you have your notes together, the broadcast will, if you let the broadcast flow, you can go back to your notes at any given point and lay off some stats, lay off some storytelling, interact with your color commentator. I always feel that you let the game take you where you go. But if you're prepared, if you have all your notes together, you'll have no worries as the broadcast progresses.
I think my style, as I try to be fair, I try to make sure that I'm covering every aspect of the game. When people watch our broadcasts, I think they know that I'm the Cubs broadcaster, but I think it's really important that I kind of maintain this even keel because we're on every day. And when the Cubs were losing 100 games about 4 or 5 years ago, I would often have fans come up to me and say, how can you be so excited every time you start a broadcast when you know the team's going to lose? And my answer was, would you want to watch if I open the broadcast by saying, welcome to Cubs baseball, the Cubs are probably going to lose today? So I'm happy to be at the ballpark every day. I really just enjoy the game no matter what is going on with the team. It's obviously a lot more enjoyable when your team is winning and playing well, but I just love my job, and I hope that comes through in my broadcasting, and I really try to maintain that genuine level of love for the game of baseball. And then anything else that happens during that broadcast or during that game, I try to describe it as accurately as I can and as fairly as I can.
For 2010, I thought about what the Blackhawk fans would want to hear. I thought about the city of Chicago and what it stands for. And you can throw in nicknames, you can throw in cultural biases, you can throw in all of that. You could just say that the Blackhawks win the Stanley Cup, and then that would be your call forever. Or you can mix in the elements that I talked about. I chose the latter because you're only going to get one shot at that. And I did think about it for a little while, but I thought to myself, if I overthink this, I'm going to ruin this. So let's settle on something simple, but meaningful. I thought, do I go, I'm going to reference the city of Chicago. Do I go with the Carl Sandburg, City of Broad Shoulders? Do I go with the Frank Sinatra, My Kind of Town, or do I call it the Windy City? And I thought, wait a minute, the Blues Brothers, Sweet Home Chicago. And I mixed that into the goal call at the end.
You let it come to you, but it's like a player who practices for a game-winning shot. You practice those off-balance shots, those half-court threes. If you're a baseball player, you visualize a no-hitter. You visualize those moments. I think it's the same for a broadcaster. You obviously visualize a potential game-winning three. How would you call that?
Timeout. They will not. 3 seconds left. Teague with it. Teague in the left wing. Teague at the buzzer! Marcus Teague returns to Chicago and drains a game winner!
You try to be conscious of whether or not you're going to maybe put too much into a call, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, you certainly envision it, you practice it, how would this call sound? But most of the time, you just let the moment take you.
You know, I've always fought against having a home run call. There are a lot of great home run calls that broadcasters have developed kind of organically over the years. But I never wanted to feel like I was going to force something that I would say every time, because I really feel that every home run is unique. And the other day when Ian Happ hit the home run on the first pitch of the Major League season, right before that at bat, my partner Jim DeShays basically said if Urania grooves a fastball, he's going to be swinging for the fences, and sure enough, it happens.
Happ hit 7 home runs in spring training, 5 of them leading off the game. I expect him to take a pretty healthy cut here if he gets a juicy-looking first pitch fastball from Urania.
Urania to Happ. And a drive to right.
Go, baby.
What were you saying, JD?
Yes, sir.
Good. Oh, baby.
Oh, my.
My call was almost bringing my partner into it, and if I had a home run call, it would have taken away, I think, from the actual moment. So, when you ad-lib a home run call every time, you definitely risk making a mistake, and I'm certainly far from perfect, but I would rather do that and have the call match that home run than have every home run kind of sound the same.
Here's Kane now, juking his way to the right, lower left corner. Shoots, he scores! Oh, no, that's turned wide by Leighton. Loose puck in the crease, and now it's in the net. They score! They score! It's in! The Hawks win the Stanley Cup!
That was a confusing moment, by the way, 2010, because Patrick Kane scored, and the shot came at such a severe angle that nobody really knew it was in the net, and the puck had slid pretty much underneath the pad that is compressed against the ice. And you could just see the very back end of the puck. And I couldn't see it when it first went in. Troy did, and Patrick Sharp actually saw it. Patrick Kane knew it was in. But when Michael Leighton, who was the goaltender of the Flyers at that time, turned and he went like that, when he did that, I looked and I saw it. And that's when I reacted. And then I saw Patrick Kane skating back up ice, celebrating, waving his hands and all of that. But what was funny about that is that even though the bench emptied and they all skated down into the one end to surround Antti Niemi, who was the goaltender, and Patrick Kane, who had scored the game winner, there were guys looking over their shoulders going, wow, is it really a goal like that? Even Jonathan Toews did it. But eventually the video showed that it went in, and it was time to celebrate.
They're going to take a look upstairs. But everybody on the ice, nobody knew where the puck was. Leighton froze in the goal crease. Let's see what we have here.
It's in the back of the net.
It's in the back of the net. The Hawks have won the Stanley Cup. Blackhawk fans around the world, you've endured 49 years of frustration, but your patience has finally paid off. Lord Stanley's new address is Sweet Home Chicago. The Chicago Blackhawks have won the Stanley Cup.
But I do remember when I was in the minor leagues, there was a play, it was a ground ball to short, and our shortstop bobbled the ball, panicked, picked it up, threw it into the third row in the stands. And then as the guy's running around the base pads now, he now takes a throw. It hit off, it didn't go into the stands. It hit the rail, came back. Now he's taking a throw from the first baseman who had fetched his bad throw, and he dropped it. And I said on the air, you could literally give him 3 errors on that play. And I didn't think anything of it. Next day, I walk in the clubhouse, and he was in my face. 3 errors! You could get 3 errors, huh? You know how hard this game is? He's being very sensitive, you know, and I was like, well, actually, you could have. They gave him 2 errors. I thought you got a break. So that happened once. My career, I'm pretty fair. I don't It's never personal. You never get upset or overexcited about things that happen on the field. You just kind of call what is out there, what is fair for the player. So only once in my career, maybe twice, have I been confronted by a player.
Game 6 of the NLCS in '03, I'm sitting in the Marlins radio booth, and because there was no local television, I just did basically color for an inning on radio and did some pre and post game work. So I'm sitting there watching, and the ball's not caught, and we've got the monitor in our booth, and I kept thinking, why do they keep showing this guy? The crowd is really getting anxious, and thankfully Steve Bartman had a cap on because he wasn't really recognizable. But it was very tense, and then all of a sudden that inning blew up, and the Cubs gave up the 3-run lead. Marlins score 8. I was in our dugout when the game ended, and I'll never forget interviewing Derek Lee, who at the time was a Marlin and later would become a Cub, and I said, how do you feel right now? He said, I want to play Game 7 right now. The fans were very angry about that night, as you can understand. Game 7, which was the following night, it was definitely more of a depressing kind of vibe. People weren't as angry as they were more resigned to the fact that their hearts were going to be broken again. And you know, as exciting as it was for me being with the team that went to the World Series and won it, when I got the Cubs job a couple years later, I really felt like I understood what Cub fans had gone through. And you know, it was very instructive for me taking the Cubs job and understanding what their history was like. And so then being with the team when they won the World Series in 2016, I felt really good for all those fans who felt that disappointment 13 years before.
Just being a part of that moment for me was incredibly special. I had worked in Philadelphia for the Flyers one season. I was a bad fit there. Winning the Stanley Cup on their ice surface in front of people who told me I was going to be a failure was kind of special for me. Winning it in a building where I had first started in the National Hockey League, and I thought I was going to be there a long, long time. By Christmas, I knew I wasn't going to be in Philadelphia. I worked one season with the Flyers, and for me, it felt like 10. And that was a tough experience, but we grow through these experiences. I said it in an early answer. Everything that happens to you in your career helps you to grow. That helped me to grow as a professional. I learned a lot, and I was very fortunate to get the breaks that I did. I got the Blackhawks job in 2006, and lo and behold, they win in 2010, and I'm the one telling the world about it. That was just an incredibly special moment for me.
For the storytellers, it's not just what they say, it's how they say it. How they tell the story is pivotal to an audience.
I'm Joe Brand, and I'm the eyes and ears of sports.
I'm Len Casper, and I'm the eyes and ears of sports.
I'm Julio Rauseo, and I'm the eyes and ears of sports.
I'm John Weideman, and I am the eyes and ears of sports.
I'm Brian Anderson, and I'm the eyes and ears of sports.
You out? No, nothing at all. No. Stop. Yeah. We'll do it live. Do you want to do lunch tomorrow after the game?
And I never took it personal when people said, wow, he's hard to listen to. Oh, he's got a really country accent, you know? Because I did have a real strong Texas drawl back then. And I kind of talked up here like this, and I kind of, I was a country boy.
Well, the 7th inning stretch is a great question because we've had some wonderful people sing it, and we've had some people who are terrified. We had the Jeff Gordon who's called it Wrigley Stadium and got immediately booed and didn't quite understand how big a deal it was.
I'll try again with a smile because I think I'm still a little smirk. A little energy. You want me a big smile back there? Okay. I'm Julio Rauseo, and I'm the eyes and ears of sports. See, that's a fake smile right there, so I'll try again.
That was good.
All right. I'll do it again. Third time's a charm for camera 3. I'm Julio Rauseo, and I'm the eyes and ears of sports. Okay back there? Yeah?
Yeah, listen, I understand that, Thomas. So once you get in, to the world of broadcasting. You get your first gig. We all know this world is a little different. It's most of the games are at night. You have sometimes a lengthy off time in the off season, although not everyone can do it. What's the normal daily routine like for John West?
Well, first of all, you guys saw it on camera. Kind of reminded me of that scene from Slapshot where the goalie gets up to go get a drink of water, and the guy, Jim Carr, has to reattach the lavalier mic to the goaltender, Denny Lemieux. That just happened, but no big deal.